All right, what is up, Switch? My name is Dominic Cantero, and I am your 9th and 10th grade boys small group leader. Where y'all at? Are you guys paying attention back there? 1, 2. Where's Reed? There's Reed. I've been told I was off center. It's not my fault. I didn't put it up here. All right. So we are diving into our week 1 of getting relationships right, guys. So we're going to be talking about, pull up my first slide here. So the way to best love God is by putting our faith in God. But what is faith? So, Oxford Languages says faith is described by the complete trust or confidence in someone or something. So, who had faith that the Chiefs were going to win the Super Bowl? Like you were diehard set that Jalen Hurts was not catching a ring this year. Diehard, like 100% all in, 1, 2. Now, who had complete faith that Saquon Barkley was about to run all over the Kansas City Chiefs? A few more, right? So why did we have these things? Did we trust that Patrick Mahomes was one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time? No. But did we also trust that Saquon Barkley was having one of the most amazing seasons of his life, and he had proof, experience, and evidence that he was on fire and that in the Super Bowl he'd still be performing just like he was before, right? So we had experience with this, but how can we experience something we don't see or we can't physically touch, or we can't watch on TV or YouTube? We have to research, we have to study, just like anything else, right? We might not be able to have that firsthand experience off the bat, but God does give us an example of what we need to have and what we need to be through His Word, through the Bible, and through others that are more experienced than us, right? He gives us leaders. Well, this week we're going to be talking about a very important leader in the Bible, and his name was Abraham. So in the story we're going to be going over today about Abraham and his son Isaac are going to be going up a mountain, and there's some things about this little trip that Isaac doesn't know about. So we are going to go through, and if everybody could stand with me for the reading of the word. And if you guys want to follow along, it is Genesis chapter 22. And we're going to be reading through the whole chapter. So bear with me, guys. So, sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham, here I am." He replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on the mountain, and I will show you." Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he had set out a place for the place that God had told him about. And on the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac. And he himself carried the fire and the knife. As soon as the 2 of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father." "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and the wood are here," he said, "but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the two of them went off together. When they had reached the place that God had told him about, Abraham had built the altar and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him to the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him, "Abraham, Abraham." "Here I am," Abraham replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham looked up in the thicket and saw a ram. Caught it by the horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as the burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the place, "The Lord will provide." And to this day, on the mountain of the Lord, it will be provided. The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, "I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of cities, the cities of their enemies, and through your offerings all of the nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me." Then Abraham returned to his servants, and then they set off together for Beersheba, and Abraham stayed in Beersheba. So, now we're going to break that down a little bit. Everybody can be seated. So, that was a lot, right? Now we're going to sit down and unpack it. So, for context, we're talking about the Father Abraham, like, Father Abraham had many sons, right? Right? But at this time, he had one son, the son that God had promised him for years. Abraham had left the land of his ancestors, had taken his nearest relative, not a direct descendant, but it'd be like your uncle taking you, the nephew, and I'm going to give all of my belongings, possessions to you because I'm too old to have kids, right? That's kind of how Abraham was. So him and his wife Sarah had this plan. So all of my belongings are going to go to my nephew Lot, but God said, "No, that's your plan. That's not mine." So God had made these preparations for them and had one son, Isaac. So Isaac was the proof that Abraham had thrown his entire old life away, his plan, everything that he had thought of in life for God. And then God blessed Abraham with Isaac. And now God's telling Abraham, "Okay, I've given you this boy is going to multiply your descendants as far as the eye can see. Okay, get rid of him. He's gone. He's mine. Send him to heaven." So obviously, the first thought you have is, why, right? Why? Why would God do this to me? Why would God make me throw away everything just so I can have nothing on earth again, right? Well, God had a reason for this, a purpose. Abraham didn't know why, but he would later find out, right? Because we don't always know what's ahead of us, but we know what's behind us. And up until this point, God had provided for Abraham. Even when it didn't look good or feel good, he knew it was right. And then as time goes on, we all know what happened. 3 days later, about 2,000 years ago, a man named Jesus died on the cross, right? And this was all God's plan. And now we look back at the story, and we're looking at Isaac had wood on his back the same way that Jesus had a wooden cross on his back, right? Now, a personal story of mine here that we're kind of experiencing as putting the burden is, we all remember COVID, right? Most of us went online for school. It was very uncertain, all these things. So back then, I was prepping to go to college. I was about to go off, do my thing, get a business degree, 5, 6 years down the road, be big balling, you know what I'm saying? I have my life set out. You know what I mean? We all kind of have that dream, that envision, that plan, right? So it's 2025, and I graduated high school about 5 years ago. So things haven't exactly gone to plan, but I'm more than blessed and honored to be in this moment right now, right? I had gone through weight gain, weight loss. I had torn my hamstring. I couldn't walk without crutches. And I didn't know what I was going to do next. I had ended up having to drop out of school. I had lost my part-time job at a restaurant. I ended up joining the Army National Guard. And I got screamed at and woken up at 4 a.m. every day. So even though the times weren't easy, I knew from the past that the present won't last forever because God has my back for all eternity. And now I want to shed some light on Isaac, because a lot of us are Isaac, right? We're just kind of living day by day, have no clue what's going to happen, but someone older than us, wiser than us, is telling us it'll be okay. God's going to provide. He's going to be there. So even though we might not know the steps we're taking today, God knows where the end of the path is going to lead. And he's set a gift called Jesus to eventually save us from what will happen in the end, right? Because we're all going to pass and die in the end, right? So what I want to leave you guys with today is just the reflection. You might not know what's going to happen today or tomorrow, but God tells us to have faith. And you might be in a time where you're hurting, where you're alone. You don't quite get it. You don't know what your plan is. A lot of you guys are in high school, about to go to college. You might not know exactly what's going to happen, but if you allow just the first step, whether that's leading at kids, whether that is reading a Bible verse in your small group, whether that's inviting your friend that normally doesn't go to church or is having a hard time to go do something, invite them to Switch, invite them to go grab Viridian, If we take the first step, God will take us on a lifelong journey. And he sent his son, that ram Jesus, to save us in the end. And all it takes is that first step up the mountain. And I don't know if you guys have ever gone up a mountain, but I've done it a few times. And man, sometimes you're cruising, you're going downhill, life is good, it feels good, everything's going according to plan, but eventually you have to climb back up. Eventually you get tired. Sometimes someone has to push you up that mountain. You're dragged along. It's not fun. But you still have to take that next step. Another small step. And another small step. Because that's all it takes. Whether that's opening up your Bible, whether that's praying in your room, silently, or out loud. Because God wants a relationship with you, Switch. Each and every one of you. He wants to be a part of his family at his dinner table. And that is the ultimate goal, guys. Now, if you guys could enter an attitude of prayer with me.